In 1832, a man sat down to write a letter. He was 82 years old in poor health, and he knew he was dying. He wasn't famous yet, not the way he would become. But the people around him already understood that when this man died, something would be gone from the world that would never exist again. Not his talent, not his ideas, something stranger than that. The last human mind that contained everything. His name was Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, and you probably know him as a writer. Faust, The Sorrows of Young Werther, the man who gave German literature its shape. That's the version that survived. But Goethe was also a botanist. He coined the word morphology, the study of living forms. He discovered the inner maxillary bone in the human jaw, a finding that helped confirm our place among the primates. He studied geology, meteorology, and optics. He served as a government minister for a decade. He ran a theater. He was seriously literate in half a dozen scientific fields and wrote about all of them with authority. And here's the thing. He wasn't unusual, not for his time. Because Goethe lived at the end of an era, roughly from the Renaissance through the early 19th century, when the total volume of recorded human knowledge was still small enough for one extraordinary mind to genuinely hold, not every word ever written, but enough of it that a single person could stand at the intersection of science, art, philosophy, and governance and speak in every direction without pretending. We have a word for them now. Polymaths. At the time, they were just educated people. Leonardo da Vinci filled notebooks with anatomy, hydraulics, optics, and architectural engineering in the same week. Leibniz invented calculus, built one of the first mechanical calculators, and wrote a complete philosophy of the universe in a single lifetime. Thomas Young, an English physician born in 1773, deciphered the Rosetta Stone, proved the wave theory of light, described how the human eye focuses on objects at different distances, and laid the groundwork for what we now call physiological optics. A biographer later titled a book about him, The Last Man Who Knew Everything. It wasn't a compliment, it was an autopsy. Because here's what's fascinating. Human knowledge doesn't just grow, it compounds. For most of recorded history, it accumulated slowly enough that an exceptional mind with enough time could actually keep pace with it. A scholar in the 1600s could read every significant book in existence. There were perhaps a few thousand of them. An entire scientific field could be mastered in a year because an entire scientific field was, in some cases, only a few years old. Then a door opened, and it never closed again. In 1665, the first academic journals appeared. Philosophical Transactions in London, Journal des Sçavans in Paris. For the first time, knowledge wasn't locked inside books waiting to be discovered. It was being produced continuously, in real time, distributed to a growing network of researchers who were all building on each other's work simultaneously. Each new paper pointed to 3 more. Each answered question raised 5 others. The feedback loop had started and nothing would slow it down. By the mid-1800s, it was already too late. Natural science had splintered into geology, biology, chemistry, physics, botany, zoology, and each of those was splintering further into subfields with their own journals, their own vocabularies, their own internal debates that outsiders could no longer follow. A chemist no longer necessarily understood physics. A biologist no longer necessarily understood mathematics. The map of human knowledge had grown past the point where any single mind could walk its entire edge. And we kept going. Today, a new academic paper is published somewhere in the world every 30 seconds. There are more active researchers alive right now than have existed in all of prior human history combined. The number of scientific journals has grown from 2 in 1665 to over 30,000 today. A specialist in one narrow corner of one field can spend an entire career without reading everything produced in their own sub-discipline. No one person will ever know everything again. We answered that question without noticing it had been asked. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. The loss wasn't just about breadth. It was about something stranger. Something that happened inside a mind when it held all of it at once. When science and art and philosophy lived in the same brain, something formed between them. Connections that no amount of specialization can produce. Goethe's color theory was wrong in the ways a physicist would be wrong, but it was right in the ways a poet would be right. About the experience of color, about what light does to a human being rather than simply to a prism. His botanical work introduced ideas about the unity of living forms that anticipated Darwin by decades. Not because Goethe was guessing, because he was looking at the same problem from directions that biology alone had not yet learned to use. Leonardo didn't design flying machines despite being a painter. He designed them because of it. His understanding of light and shadow was an understanding of air. His anatomy was an understanding of motion. The fields contaminated each other. That was the point. The polymath mind didn't just know more things, it knew things differently. And you can't get that back by putting specialists in a room together. The thing that made those minds generative was that the walls didn't exist inside them. A metaphor from music could become a model for physics. A principle from architecture could reframe an entire field of biology. The connections formed because there were no borders yet to stop them. A team of experts brings depth. What it doesn't bring is the thing that forms in the gap between disciplines when one mind holds both of them at once. We built the borders for good reasons. Specialization gave us vaccines and microchips, and a view of the universe at scales Goethe couldn't have imagined. The depth we gained is real. The knowledge we've produced in 200 years dwarfs everything that came before it combined. But so is what we lost. There is a kind of question that only gets asked from the intersection. The question that sounds unremarkable until someone from the wrong field wanders in and asks it. And suddenly, everything shifts. The history of science is full of those moments. And the person asking was almost always the one who didn't know they weren't supposed to be there. In 1832, Goethe's letter sat unfinished on his desk. The door he represented didn't close all at once. It closed slowly, field by field, journal by journal, year by year, until one morning there was simply no one left who could have opened it, even if they tried. We didn't lose a person, we lost a shape of mind. And every so often, in the work of someone who refuses to stay in their lane, who wanders into the wrong discipline and asks the question nobody thought to ask, you can almost see the outline of what it looked like, what it was capable of, what it meant to stand at the center of all of it and look outward in every direction at once. We called them the last of their kind. Maybe they were the first of something we haven't figured out how to be again.